What's up guys, and welcome back to the Comedy Dimension. For those of you who are new, glad to have you here. Consider subscribing and liking the video if you enjoyed the content. Today's a real juicy video. We're talking about Ada and Damon and their weaknesses, as I think I have a good idea of what some of their weaknesses might be, and they each may have more than one weakness. Even though they seem like completely broken characters, as Itachi said, every jutsu has a weakness. Now, like a good story, I'm going to slowly build up to the reveal of these weaknesses and how it came to this conclusion rather than just give it away right off the bat, so stick with me here. It starts with a few questions I asked myself. The first question is, why was Boro given the assignment to dispose of Amado's cyborgs that were supposed to be stronger than Jigen? Jigen was the strongest inner member of Kara, and Code is narratively implied to be the second strongest member, and I think a lot of people probably think that Kashin Koji is stronger than Boro too, based on how he performed against a 10% Jigen, and also because he has a jutsu that literally bypasses regeneration, which he used against Victor. So why didn't Jigen personally fight the cyborgs himself? Or why didn't he assign Code to do it, since he likely trusts Code more than Boro, and he's stronger than him too? Or why didn't he and Code fight them together? Jigen probably didn't fully trust Amado, which is why he wanted the cyborgs disposed of to begin with, so wouldn't he want to see and confirm their disposal with his own eyes? Why assign Boro? On top of that, given Ada and Damon's relationship as brother and sister, there's a good chance that they were together when they were meant to be disposed of, which means Boro had to take them on at the same time. Again, why Boro? Not only that, how did Boro even get them into those pods where they were put to sleep or whatever happens in there anyway?
Seriously? You asked why?
I have an answer to all of these questions. First off, Jigen likely must have known about Ada and Damon's abilities, as well as any of the other several cyborgs Amado spoke of, otherwise how did he even know how dangerous they were and to be worried about them? So obviously he knew a bit about their abilities, yet he tasked Boro to take care of them. Let's quickly review what we currently know about Ada and Damon's abilities. Ada has her Senrigan to project herself into present situations of her choosing, or past events of her choosing, between the time she was born and the current time, so she can't see anything before she was born or into the future. She also has the ability to steal your heart so that you love her and can't bring yourself to kill her. The only exceptions to this are Ada's blood relatives and Otsutsuki. So right off the bat, it's kind of weird for Jigen to not fight Ada, since he should be immune to her love ability, so it must have been Damon, who would be nearby her, that he was most likely worried about. So let's talk about Damon now. We know that he has the ability to reflect the attacks you intend to use on him back onto yourself, and supposedly, the stronger the killing intent, the stronger the reaction. Now, personally, I think the killing intent thing isn't as deep as many of you guys might think. I think it's just that if your attack is meant to kill, you will probably die from it, whereas if your attack is just like a flick in the forehead, you'll only get hit by a flick on the forehead. It's just a matter of the attack you plan to give is the attack that you will receive. We see this in action with Code, when all he does is attempt to put a claw mark on Damon, and then that claw mark is reflected onto himself. He had no killing intent there, but the attack he intended to do was reflected onto himself. It's just an automatic process where what you plan to do to Damon will instead be reflected onto you. Kind of like Gaara's Sand, where it automatically protects him regardless of his own will or conscious actions. Same with Damon. Sounds like a tricky duo to deal with then, right? So how did Boro take care of them? Don't worry, I'll answer that in a little bit. But first, let's get into the potential weaknesses that Ada did not want to disclose to Code now. Starting off with Ada, you might be able to immobilize her and seal her movements like Boro must have done to get her into that pod she was in, rendering her useless but not dead. As long as you're not trying to kill her or really hurt her to any significant degree, you might be able to fight her somewhat. For Damon, to start with, if you can survive your own attacks with no damage, he's not as lethal of an opponent. So, let's dive a bit deeper and compare and contrast the abilities of these two characters. Code has actually attempted the exact same move on both Ada and Damon at some point, which was to put a claw mark on them. With Ada, when she was first introduced and Code got pissed off because she didn't respond to him, Code was fully able to put a claw mark on her and stick his claws through it by her neck, but he just couldn't execute the killing blow. He's also put a claw mark on Ada again later on when he went to go find Kawaki and he stuck his ear through it to listen to her. With Damon, the claw mark was simply reflected onto Code's body instead. So with that in mind, you might be able to restrain Ada no problem, but not be able to kill her. Whereas with Damon, it doesn't matter the intent. Whatever you intend to do is reflected back onto you. I now want to discuss something I came up with after watching Kitomaki's recent video about Damon's potential weakness, and that has to do with the observation he made that Ada's eye resembles a crescent or half moon, whereas Damon's resembles more of a quarter moon. And the rest of this from here is kind of just my own idea. The fact that they both resemble moons could indicate that their dojutsu make use of the same concept in their abilities, just in a different way. When it comes to the moon in Naruto, it has been associated with time in a few instances. A good example is with Itachi Tsukuyomi, where he is freely able to control time within his genjutsu, and the name Tsuki means moon in Japanese. Ada's dojutsu, the Senrigan, is clearly related to time in some aspects, as she can see the past and present with her eyes, but explicitly cannot see into the future. Meanwhile, Damon's ability seems to be related to the future, as in attacks you are about to do to him are reflected onto you before they actually happen. So if Ada can see into the past and present but cannot see into the future, or have any connection to future sight, perhaps Damon's ability is related to the future but cannot have any connection to the past or present. As in, he cannot reflect attacks you've used on him in the past over and over and over and over again, or an attack that is being used in the present directed towards someone else where Damon is not in the line of fire. So if you use an attack on him and he reflects it, he can't reflect it again if you keep using it over and over again. When you think about it, every little skirmish or fight with Damon we have seen has ended in one attack. We've never seen him go through multiple of the same attacks from the same person. His opponents were all simply killed or knocked out by the first attack they threw at him. This is probably intentional by Ikimoto's part. Like, he's able to finish battles in one shot, since a lot of people go for a killing blow only once before it reflects and kills them instead. But if you can survive your own killing or battle-ending blow, you might be able to go and use it again on him without him reflecting it, as we've never seen him do so yet. Because when you think about it, how else would Damon even be defeated if literally everything was always reflected no matter what? There has to be some limitation. There is a weakness to his ability. Every jutsu has a weakness, like Itachi said, and this could be it, and it ties into the time aspects of Ada and Damon's dojutsu and abilities, and I think it makes a lot of sense personally. So now let's finally answer the question of, why have Boro disposed of these cyborgs? The virus and his regeneration. Boro is immune to every single one of his own attacks, and he has an area of effect ability that can immobilize you without killing you. He has antibodies for his own virus, so when Boro spreads his virus around, he's already exposing himself to the virus, but it does nothing to him because of the antibodies. So even if Damon were to reflect it, it wouldn't do anything to him, and it's also an area of effect attack that is continuously spreading around the battlefield, not a single directed attack towards Damon. So with that in mind, I don't think Damon's ability can just constantly reflect the virus away from him back to Boro at all times over and over and over and over again. He probably is eventually affected by it because it's constantly spreading around him. Otherwise, Damon would have no weaknesses and he would never have been sealed into that pod to begin with. Again, this ties into what I mentioned about the time relations with the abilities of both Ada and Damon earlier. Ada can see into the past and present, but explicitly not the future. Damon's abilities are related to the future, as in what you plan to do in just a moment, so perhaps his abilities are explicitly unrelated to the past and present, as in perhaps he cannot reflect an ability that you already tried to use on him in the past. In other words, if you use an attack on him and can survive it no problem, you can then use that attack on him again without dealing with his reflection ability anymore for that specific attack. For example, if Boro shot a lava style jutsu at him and it was reflected back onto him, he could just regenerate from it anyway, and then he might be able to use that attack on Damon now without any reflection. And the same concept with the virus. Boro spreads it around Damon once and Damon reflects it back onto Boro, where it does nothing to him, and then Boro spreads it again and Damon can't reflect it anymore. Meanwhile, for Ada, the virus is not a killing jutsu, it just paralyzes you, so Boro might not have any problems using it on Ada, and then once she's paralyzed, he can easily just put her in that pod and save with Damon, and that's why Boro was chosen for the job, because he is perfect for it. So Damon's first weakness might be some sort of attack that you can easily withstand if it was used on you, and only having the intent to restrain Ada might be the key to defeating her. That's just the start though. Let's now consider some other possible weaknesses here. In the video by Kitamaki I mentioned earlier, he brought up the idea of that smoke bomb Sasuke used on Ishiki that blocks clairvoyant powers. Clairvoyant powers referring to dojutsu abilities, not just the Byakugan, which means that something like Sasuke's precognition with the Sharingan Eye of Insight might not work when inside that smoke's area of effect, for example. And so, if Damon's reflection ability is related to his dojutsu, then it might not work if he's inside that smoke bomb's radius, and Ada might not be able to see anything that happens inside of that smoke either. This is definitely a possible weakness for the two of them as well, and if their dojutsu were created by Amato's ninja tech, and were not something they were just born with, then the idea that using another form of ninja tech to counter Amato certainly makes a lot of sense too. The last weakness that we can imply is that Damon's ability doesn't seem to work when he's asleep, which he seems to need to sleep a lot based off the last several chapters, as Code was able to just grab Damon and pull him through a claw mark when he was sleeping. If it worked while he was sleeping, he should have just grabbed himself, since when he tried to put a claw mark on Damon without killing intent, that was also reflected onto himself. Altogether, I think that these are some of the possible weaknesses for Ada and Damon, and I think the first ones I mentioned earlier related to time must somehow be true because I see no other way for Boro to have been able to subdue them, and no reason for why Boro would even be assigned to take them out to begin with. Since he doesn't have that smoke bomb Sasuke used, since Katasuki and the Leaf Scientists were the ones who made that tool, I guess unless they really want to say that Boro put them in those pods when they were both asleep, or something stupid like that. But with these weaknesses in mind, Boro is the perfect choice to dispose of them, and perhaps he didn't kill Ada because he could only subdue her, but couldn't bring himself to kill her, and maybe he didn't try to kill Damon because he's Ada's sister, and she asked him to spare him, or perhaps he just didn't try to kill him because he was a little wary of the reflection ability, but he could still subdue him. As far as the other cyborgs, we don't know the fates of them. For all we know, Boro actually killed them, or maybe they're also stored away somewhere. We don't know. But to recap, Ada might be a simple matter of fighting to restrain her rather than to kill her, and Damon might not be able to continuously reflect the jutsu or attack you've used on him in the past over and over again. So as long as you can withstand your own attack and it's strong enough to defeat Damon, you're good to go. And perhaps that clairvoyance blocky smoke bomb might be helpful as well. But I want to know what you guys think. Let me know how you feel about the potential weaknesses of Ada and Damon I laid out in the video here, and what do you think of my analysis for how I came up with those weaknesses. And if you have any other ideas, be sure to let me know in the comment section below, because I'm very curious to see what other ideas you guys might have too. For those of you who made it this far, thank you so much for the support, but I do have to remind you that
You're already under my genjutsu.
So subscribe, leave a comment, like the video, and hit that bell icon for notifications. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye!